Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, episode 5, we're venturing into yet another species, the sheep industry. I'm coming into this pretty much ground level for the past 45 years, but I'm not going to tell you that I don't have just a little bit of experience with sheep at a young age. And just as I brought in, as you'll eventually hear, Mr. Tyson Rule, who is one of the biggest experts in the field, I have brought in a couple other experts in my field. And that would be Marvin and Rose, my parents. Marvelous Marvin and Rosie's diner owner, sitting to my right, Marvin to my left. Children, how are you?
Oh, we're fine.
What'd you say, Mom?
Just great.
You're just great. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whenever I was, I think, 9 years old, Dad come back from the Hummuston sale barn, and he said, I bought you something. And I think there was 8, 9, 10.
That's probably about right.
White-faced, we called them Corriedale ewes on there. They were, Dad evidently thought I needed in the sheep business. What, do you remember why we did that? Was I starting 4-H, or what was the deal?
I don't really recall what the deal was. I imagine the main thing was to probably clean up the weeds around the lots. But,
I'm guessing you're right. And give me something to do.
Everybody
probably
needs a shepherd, you know.
Oh, yeah. You remember those, Mom?
Oh, yes. They wasn't very pretty.
No, they wasn't very pretty. No, they were, like I say, I think you give $20 a head for them, didn't you?
That'd have been a load.
Yeah. Yes, it would have. But anyway, I think they were bred. That got me started into the sheep business. And so, but you were, Dad, you were into it really young, wasn't you?
Yes. Again, my dad bought mine first. I believe he bought 3 of them. Purebred Corriedale ewes. That we was going into the show business, going to hit it big. And
how old were you?
I think I was about 10 years old.
So that would have been 1946 or 7?
Yeah. That was a different world back then.
Oh, yeah.
Nearly every farm had a small flock of sheep around. They were part of the cash flow again.
You're saying now that sheep were no stranger to every farm, huh?
That's for sure. And along with that, sheep maintained a certain point of diversification within themselves because most of the sheep are raised for meat. But back then, wool was a very important product also, and it was something that worked to get just as much as you did to get the meat production.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because as I got into as you got me into the sheep, I remember having to hire, was it old T.E. Hogue to come shear?
That's exactly right.
Had a finger or two missing, if I remember right. And boy, there was just nothing easy about that. And we would shear them sheep, shear them out and put the wool in big, long, 6-foot bags or so. And
well, before that even, you didn't have electric clippers that you did it with.
Oh my.
You had an arm that drove a clipper head, and you'd throw the sheep down on a tarp, and then you would gather all that wool up after you got it peeled off and lay it on what we call a wool board. And that was about a 4-foot square deal that would fold up and make a box.
Oh, man.
And you'd take what they call wool twine, and it was kind of a paper twine, and you'd lace that all across that board, across that table, and then when you folded it up, all you had to do is tie it, and you had a nice little block of wool.
A little bale, huh?
A little bale of wool, and put it in a bag, and off to town we go.
For some reason, I can remember that twine. I think it was kind of a brown, about like big bale twine. Well, a little bigger than big bale twine now, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was
like a small rope, basically.
Yeah, and it was kind of a paper.
But it was paper, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, and then I remember, in fact, I just told Kent over at Allerton Lumber that I remember the building where he stores extra wood. I remember hauling our wool to that guy. It was Cawthorn, I believe, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I remember selling. I don't think it brought very much, but at least we got rid of it, and we got the old ewes sheared out, and they felt a lot better. So.
And they were full of ticks.
They were full of ticks?
Oh, my goodness, yes. When we'd shear them, they'd have ticks galore in them.
Oh, my.
But they'd go through that wool whenever you go to try to sell it. They'd analyze that thing from one end to the other, because that wool, one thing you watch, they call it the crimp. And instead of that being a straight fiber, it had a kind of a wave to it.
Right.
And the bigger the wave, the more it would stretch out into a fiber they could use. Mm-hmm. And then it also they'd check it for how high it was in lanolin.
Yeah, and lanolin's what made your hands greasy after you gathered it all up. Yeah,
and smelled with it.
Yeah, exactly.
When we milled, I would buy lanolin lanolin in bottles because the water from washing the milkers would have my hands just raw, and we'd buy lanolin in the bottles.
Oh, yeah.
And rose
That's
water.
the byproduct of the wool. Yeah, I don't know. I assume wool is, I mean, obviously it's still a big deal, but boy, you don't hear that much about it, or you don't see that much about it anymore.
Well, I imagine too, if your purebred business was just as competitive and especially as it is in all the animal shows even today. And one of the things we chose the Cordell for was because they were good at both meat and wool. They called it blocking them. You go, you had to stand and put them on. But to start that out, if you was going to a breeder's show, and along about the 1st of March, you would go in and clip their back from their withers back over their hips and make it just as flat and wide as it could. And then aiming for a show come August. Well, that made them look like they had a more depth of body. They always considered a firm fleece as being one that would carry more crimp to it and everything. So the little trick was go out and sprinkle mineral oil or spray them with mineral oil and then kick up dust all around them. and that would make a solid, firm fleece for the judge to grab a hold of.
Oh my! You dang sheep jocks, always doing something illegal, aren't you? But yeah, it's changed a lot, as you're going to hear Tyson talk about. He's been extremely successful in the show ring. What breeds do you remember back then of sheep?
Oh, there was a number of different breeds, and always competitive between them all. And the smallest toy, I guess, was the Cheviot breed, which matured out probably 60 pounds or such a matter. They were real small. But the major producers was, of course, number one would be Cordell, and Columbia, Hampshire, Shropshire, Suffolk, Merinos.
But it's kind of funny you mentioned, because there's a couple of them you just mentioned that, as Tyson tells me, is basically about 100% of the crossbred sheep in the show ring today. So, and that, I guess I can tell you, you don't have, he said they're about 90 to 95% Hampshire and about 5% Suffolk.
Yeah.
And I think that was the right percentage. But anyway, I found that kind of unique and kind of educational. But as you can tell, that was back in the 40s that Dad's talking about, seeing all those different breeds of sheep around. And how many did you have any when you was married, or where did your grandpa Hook buying you 3 sheep go then?
Well, we just I suppose bought a few replacement ewes along the way. I can't remember that much, but we just basically kept back the ewe lambs and bred our way up until this bride came along again.
Oh my! Rosie's always doing something.
Yeah, and at that time, we was up to about 80 head altogether.
80 head of sheep?
80 head of sheep altogether. We go in the mid 50s. I think I just read it. Actually, it was 70 years ago that the Allerton milk plant was established, and dairying became a pretty lucrative deal throughout this whole community for a while. So I decided rather than to fool with the sheep, we sold those and went into the dairy business, and that about concluded it for good.
I mean, yeah, I don't remember ever having sheep other than, like you say, when you bought those for me. But Mom, what was you telling me about some pickup Dad had?
Oh, he had an old blue 47 or 48. No, might be 46 pickup, and it had slats on it for the bed, and they were white. Oh, it was classy looking. And of course, I had my eye on him. And he would drive down to Mercer to get feed.
Oh.
And I would see this sign, Marvin Hook, registered Cordell sheep.
Oh, you were, my goodness, Marvin. You were big pimping back then. Holy cow.
There's a whole history behind that sign, because it was the back off of an oil stove that Mom had. And I painted a white background and then drew the sheep and done the writing and nailed it on the side of the truck.
So you made the sign yourself?
I made the sign myself.
Holy buckets.
I thought it was gorgeous.
I bet you did. I bet you thought the driver was gorgeous too, though.
I don't know
whether you ever even seen the sign or not. But what year was that?
About
55, 4.
53, maybe 53.
So what was the pickup?
I believe it was actually about a 1950 half-ton Chevy.
Yeah, babe. And what was the slats you were talking about on the back? I don't understand.
Oh, it's easy to bed.
Oh, you mean a stock rack?
Yeah, stock
but
rack.
we didn't know what Botten stock racks was. Omaha Standard was a big name back then for Botten, but we had one befores.
Oh, of course. Huh. Was it like a low profile stock rack or was it a?
No, you could haul cattle in it.
You could.
Yeah.
Huh.
We had hinges on it. He could raise it or
lower it. according
whatever
to
he was
height.
hauling.
Huh. Because back then there was no goosenecks that you hooked up to.
Oh,
and
no.
It was, I can remember, this is kind of off the subject, but I remember old Tuffy, that was Dad's favorite horse, Palomino horse. He was a legend. And he would the center of the back of the stock rack was a gate that you pulled up and down or took in and out. And old Tuffy, he could run on a dead run, jump in the back of the truck and stand there and ride for miles, couldn't he? You remember the one time that it didn't end well for Tuffy in the back of the stock rack?
Yeah, we was working cattle, and of course, there was always a lot of excitement and everything. And I already had him loaded. I jumped in the pickup to get around the calf and shot forward, and decided that was the wrong way, so I hit the brakes and plowed backwards and shot him right out the back end.
Slingshotted poor old Tuffy right out of the back of the stock rack.
And when I looked in the rearview mirror, the hard man was just on the ground rolling and laughing because old Tuffy had run and caught up with me and jumped back in.
Tuffy was part human. That's all there was to it. There wasn't no ditch he couldn't inch his way down. There wasn't no yearling he couldn't run up on and bite in the back. And wasn't his daddy rode in the Rose Bowl parade?
Yeah.
That's
right. Doc Paul from Osceola had him.
Doc Paul?
And they rode him in the Rose Bowl parade.
And then Tuffy was offspring. And
he belonged to the Hook family because he had a mind of his own.
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, I don't know how we got off on horse here, but he lived to how long?
He was 33 years old.
33 years old. I knew he lived forever. But and all I remember is I rode old Fat Charlie, the strawberry roan, and we could work all day long, and Charlie never did come out of the low gear. And Tuffy was always in high gear, and you had thought he'd been wore out, but when we was 2 miles from home and it was time to turn around and head towards home, he danced the entire way, didn't he?
He sure did.
Danced sideways the entire way. And loved every second of it. But
yeah, those were the golden days for you, and you pulled more darn ornery tricks. The old roan horse was really clumsy and was moving some cattle, and he fell down or stumbled anyhow, and you went off and you laid. And I was about a half a quarter away, and you never got up, and you never got up, and you never got up. And I thought, my land, he's killed the kid. So I rode down there, and here you was on your back. Just thought you'd rest a while.
I was mad. I hated Charlie. He was fat. He was clumsy, and I didn't. Dad had yelled at me to get around that group of cattle that was breaking away, and so Fat Charlie was running and stumbled and tripped and fell, and I shot off over the head. Didn't hurt. I kind of slid like I would into home base, but I knew Dad was probably worried, and I was going to let him worry a little bit just out of revenge. But anyway, that's I would have been probably 12 or 13 probably, but we used to do everything on horse back then. But once again, we're talking about the horses in the sheep industry here somehow. I'm not exactly sure how, but in this podcast, Tyson talks about his goal of starting with 400 ewes, and then all of a sudden the game plan changed, and he ended up going towards 1,000 ewes. And if you remember back when I got in the sheep business, I'd done something similar. You remember you started out with them old Gummer ewes, and then neighbor down the road, a mile, Wayne Shipley, he wanted to disperse. You remember that?
I remember that.
And he come to me and wanted to know if I wanted to buy him out, and I just sat right in and give him $35 a head, I think, for everything he had. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd been a big spender if you did.
Well, I don't remember. I bought them all out, and I ended up close to, seems like 70 head of ewes. All I remember is we lambed them there where Mom eventually was talking about the farrowing houses. We lambed them on that side outside. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we put the same tarp, probably the same tarp material over them. And I can remember doing that, I think, one time. And then I got lucky. I had a guy, we live right on Highway 65, U.S. Highway 65 here in southern Iowa. And I had a guy drive by and seen that flock. And he pulled in and he said, would you price me that entire flock? And I priced him at double what I had in them. And he took them all. You remember that?
Yeah. I didn't remember the details, but
I got $70 a head out of him, I remember. And I sold him the 2 Suffolk bucks I got from Fetters. Remember, Fetters was raising the Suffolks back then. And I sent them down the road and never looked back, Rosie.
Yeah, and I think you might have spent your money.
You remember what I spent my money on?
Yes, I sure do.
1977 Chevy half-ton pickup, didn't
Burgundy.
I? Burgundy, two-tone maroon. You dang right. Lifted it with a 2-inch lift kit, chrome roll bar and chrome push bar, just like the Fall Guy on TV,
yeah.
by the way. That was 19. I was a freshman in high school. Yep. So the sheep, I have no complaints about the sheep business. None. I'm not planning on getting back into it. As you're going to hear in this podcast, Tyson was a little more successful with his sheep, still is, than I was. I thought I'd done good. He's going to blow your mind with some of the stuff you're going to hear in this podcast. And I'm just going to tell you, I learned more in that hour than I did in the last 54 years of my existence about sheep. I can't have a favorite because they're all my children, but it's definitely one of my favorite podcasts, mainly because it just took me out of my comfort zone. And it's just, I think you're really going to like it. Well, I suppose we better get out of here. What are you and Drake been doing, Dad?
we're in the hayfields.
Hayfield's hard, you know?
Yep. Starting to quarrel with the weather and again now.
Yeah, getting a little. We needed some rain though, didn't we?
Oh, we needed it bad, but we got it dandy. We got
Had a half inch this morning.
Had a half inch this morning already. I heard it. What did we get the big rain there?
2 7/10.
2 7/10, and I mean we were desperately needing it. So that ought to pretty well seal the deal on the corn. I think.
It ought to do it.
You know, Rosie, what have you been up to? Lawnmower still going together? Still running?
Oh,
or not?
I didn't have to mow my yard yesterday. Marvin mowed it for me.
Marvin mowed it.
Oh yeah, it was so hot, and he took over the job that I cooked for Sunday dinner.
You did? Mm-hmm. Well, good, because that probably should be priority.
The top of my priority.
Yeah. We still get a lot of people trying to weasel into a seat there at the Rosie's Diner, and I just don't know what to tell them. What do you think we should tell them?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, if they would come and sit at my table with me, they wouldn't think Rosie's Diner was so fancy.
Oh, you said that last time, but I think that I don't think they care about your table. I think they care about what's sitting on that table. So.
Yeah, that could be.
I seen a lot. Todd down at Custom Tees, he got our T-shirts sent out to all the many customers as ordered, and I am grateful for that. And anyway, I just kept seeing Rosie's Diner T-shirts surface. What do you think about that?
I don't know why they want that awful-looking woman on their front.
Oh, you better be careful. They say it looks just like you. So.
Well, it probably does. That's what I've been telling you.
All right. Well, it's already mid-July. It's hard to believe, and it's already episode 5 here. And like I said, we're moving into the sheep industry, and it is a dandy, folks. And I guess I'll let you guys go back to your business here. Marvin, thanks for coming up again and jumping in. Once again, let's clarify this while you're both here, Mom. You don't care if he comes in, right?
Oh, my, no.
No. Okay. He kind of gets to showing off a little, doesn't he?
Well, he can stretch it, maybe.
Yeah, stretch. Yeah, he gets kind of windy, doesn't he?
No.
Like, I would never do that to him like that horse deal, would I?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all right. We'll jump right on into episode 5 here. That's the first episode of the sheep industry featuring Tyson Rural of Rural Sheep Company. So thanks a bunch, guys.
Yep, you're welcome.
You're listening to the Genuine JBH Podcast.
Well, all right, let me set you up here for episode 5 with Tyson Rural. Whenever I decided I was going to try and do all 4 species, I obviously put my feelers out on Snapchat to see if there was one name that kept coming up amongst the sheep industry people that they wanted to hear from. Involved in the semen industry, and the one name that always came up was Tyson Rural. And so it just so happened that I had to go up in that area within a couple hours to picture some breads for Dr. Jeff Holmes, and so I called Tyson, and luckily he had the morning of the day I was supposed to picture the breds open. So I just drove up earlier that night and stayed in Sioux City, drove on up to Haywarden, and got there about 8:30, and he gave me a short tour of the place, the show barn there at home, and then the working facility there a few miles away. And it was then that my mind was blown. I had met Tyson one other time before at one of the showdowns that I was emceeing, and that was really the only time I'd ever talked to him, and that was just pretty much in passing. But man, what a good guy to talk to. What a very professional, very informative, just a good guy all the way around. I hope you appreciate everything that you're about to hear here, because as I mentioned before, I think I don't care what species you're in, I think you are absolutely going to love this next hour I spent with Tyson Rule of Rural Sheep Company. So now let's go right into the lab where all the AI and embryo transplanting is done, and where I've set up my mics for this next hour of podcast with Tyson Rule. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Genuine JBH Podcast, sponsored by Amos Welding, Voss Angus, Werning Cattle Company, Wilkerson Farms, Catalog Livestock Listing Service, powered by SteerBidder.com, and Custom Tees of Middle Georgia.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I am about to get in. No, I'm already there. I'm in way over my head on this species, and I'm not going to try and tell you any different. But I tell you what, I am going to have a good time, because I like to learn new stuff. And I know from the past podcasts, I've been getting some of that reported back too. Guys saying that, hey, that's not really our species. But I tell you what, that was fun to listen to. And we're diving into the sheep industry right now, and all my snappers, boy, they, when I kind of put the feelers out there to all you sheep folks, who do I need to be talking to? Who do I need to be talking to? And there was one name, especially in the semen industry, that just surfaced to the top every time. And, well, I'm sitting in his lab right now. That's, things kind of got lucky. I had to be up in that area shooting some pictures, and I called him, and he has been more than gracious to take me in and show me the facility. And I tell you what, I told him, I said, I kind of like to go into these things blind, and I could tell he was a little nervous about that, and so I said, all right, let's just walk through the facility. And after we did, holy buckets, it's a good thing that I have at least some idea going into this. Like I said, I'm not going to pretend to know anything. I always tell them to start at ground level, and I am right there at ground level. So any of you professional sheep guys out there, don't hammer on me too hard. But all right, it is my great pleasure to be sitting. What's our address here, Tyson?
This is Haywarden, Iowa.
Haywarden, Iowa. I knew somebody raised shorthorns around here at one time, I think.
Yeah, Bob Dale. Actually, he is the son of my dad's original buyer of lambs at the Pack of Lambs.
No kidding.
Yeah, he just ran about, I think, 8, 10, 15 cows. But, always got excited about the shorthorn deal.
Isn't it funny how, especially the older you get, you hear a town and you know somebody in it, and you can kind of put the pieces together, but it's kind of funny how weird little things like that stick in my brain. But anyway, Mr. Tyson Rule is sitting here, and we're actually in your lab, right?
Yeah, this is the lab where we process semen at.
You bet. So it doesn't get any more real for season 1 of the Genuine JBH podcast, the semen industry, than to kick off our inaugural sheep podcast in the lab of Tyson Rule. And what do you just go by? Rural
Sheep Company is the name that we go
Sheep
by.
Company.
Yep.
All right. Let's do like we do every other podcast. For those of you out there that don't have any idea who Tyson is, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm guessing you grew up around sheep.
Yeah, we grew up in a commercial sheep environment, so not really show sheep until about 1995. I always explain to people that our family, we started our first packing plant back in 83 in Haywarden, Iowa, where we moved, my family moved from Colorado, where we had a large-scale sheep feedlot out there.
What part of Colorado?
Right outside of Brighton, so it's right outside of Denver.
You bet.
So we started that process and moved out whenever I was 4 in the middle of the freezing winter. So I don't think anybody in our family was really excited to move to Iowa at that point. And
I'm betting it can get just a little wintry up here.
Yeah, it was a little we're South Dakota, so everybody calls us Iowa, but we should be considered Haywarden, South Dakota.
Exactly.
We're about a mile off the river. So
we're basically right in is it the northwest or north?
Very northwest corner.
Very northwest corner. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're up like Tyson said, right on the line of South Dakota and Iowa. And anyway, tell us about you growing up there. Your family had a packing plant there, you said, and then you eventually moved to Iowa. And
Yep. So we had the feedlots in Colorado. We moved in '83 back to Iowa. We refurbished a old cattle packing plant into a sheep packing plant. We ran anywhere from 1,200 head to 3,000 head just based on a day from 1983 to 2009. So my family was really involved in the commercial side of the world. We got involved with like everybody else, 4-H and FFA with our show lambs, and kind of expanded and started producing our own in '95. Had our first national champion in 2001 at National Western Stock Show. Went on for a long time where we win a couple state fairs a year, one state fair 1 year, kind of go back and forth.
Now let me ask you: you were producing them to sell, or you were producing them for your kids to show?
We were producing those to sell. My oldest daughter is 17, so we really didn't show until about 2013, 14.
You got 3 kids, you said?
Yep. So Madison's my 17-year-old.
Okay.
Then I have Mackenzie, my middle child, and Maverick, my youngest. Our main goal was to produce sheep for customers to purchase.
Sure. Show sheep.
Show sheep, correct. Yeah. So that started in '95. Like I said, in 2001, we had our first big national champion. From that point on, from 2002 through 2009, we probably would win a state fair or 2 a year, maybe have a year off. But
all the time still in the packing plant business.
Still in the packing plant until 2009, correct. Yep. So in 2008, I moved back from corporate America, came back into Hayward in Iowa from Topeka, Kansas. That's where we started to really kind of get aggressive on the sheep side. So we had a business plan put together. Originally was to have someone that could do chores on a daily basis. My dad, a full-time employee, to move us from 100 head to 400 head to where he had someone here all the time to do work for him.
And that's 400 head of ewes, or
400 head of ewes, correct? In the show side, and that kind of grew and morphed in my business plan to all of a sudden we wanted to have 1,000 ewes, and we had a big facility. We were running commercial sheep at that point. We learned that the seed stock business was more profitable in the commercial world, so it was easy for us to kind of transition as we transitioned out of the packing industry to also transition from commercial sheep to strictly seed stock.
So basically, for the cattle people out there, it's cow-calf pairs versus feedlot cattle. Is that what you're comparing there?
Yep, correct.
2009, something changed, correct?
Well, that's when we had done a little bit of embryo transfer work. I was back on site full time for the last year, and the embryo transfer work was great. We needed to figure out a way to breed more sheep, to the better bucks. When you have 1,000 ewes, you don't want to have to run 15, 20 bucks to cover those same ewes. So that's where we talked to our embryo transfer technician out of New Zealand. He came, we discussed, hey, what about doing large scale artificial insemination, just like what we do with these donors, but instead of doing 10 a day or 15 a day, can we do hundreds a day?
Right.
So we flew in a lady from Australia, or I think maybe actually New Zealand.
Let me stop you right there. For those of you who aren't familiar with the sheep production, especially the artificial insemination and all that, let me warn you, it's nothing like what you're doing in cattle.
No.
It's nothing like what you're doing in hogs. It's the first time I heard about it, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. You're going to all that headache just to AI and embryo transplant. And I guess it's all about perspective.
Yep.
Coming from a cattle hog side of thing, we think that looks like a lot of extra work. But if it's the only way to do it,
it's the only way, and it's really the only way to do it. And, we started out the same way.
And we'll get into that. We're going to get into that in detail here eventually, but go ahead.
It seemed like a lot of work when we first started. Where, oh my goodness, we got to do all this extra programming. We got to have cradles. We got to have, a technician come in to perform the work. We had to have laparoscopes.
So what year did you say was the first time you actually artificial inseminated a ewe?
Probably in 2006 and 7 for an embryo transfer program.
For an embryo transplant. What about AI?
That was 2009.
2009.
Where we were strictly just trying to AI sheep.
You were embryoing before you were AIing?
Yes. So probably in 2001, 2, 3, we probably dabbled into artificial insemination with a gentleman that was actually in Northeast Iowa, Dr. Gorley. I think a lot of guys back then, we had frozen semen that was older. We'd, breed 10 ewes. Everybody'd meet up and, that person would, AI. We'd use old semen. Never really get anything that was really relevant at that point because we were using older semen that we'd progressed past. 2009 was the first time we looked at it as a scalable opportunity. That's where we went through and, in theory, bred 400 ewes to 3 rams in a 4-day period, which was kind of unique for our sheep industry. No one really had tried that in our club lamb seed stock business.
Right.
So, I
had it been done commercially?
Not in the U.S. No. It still really isn't being done just on scale of economy side. In Australia, it had been done a ton. So that's where New Zealand and Australia.
Now, why would Australia be that further advanced?
They have more numbers. So for them, they had.
But they're not probably show sheep, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are, I guess you could say. Their show sheep are different than our show sheep.
Sure.
No different than the club calves or different than the, the pair calves. But, so they had experienced it. They had moved into it. They had actually started the technology to do the process in Australia. So they were just more advanced. So, whenever I told them, hey, I want to do this, oh, sure, no problem. Will be simple. Here's the 8 steps of things you need to be prepared for. To me, it seemed like a ton of work, but for them, it seemed like second nature. So, when we did our 400 head that year, I mean, it seemed like a pretty good sized program and so forth. And, looking at the rest of this industry, I mean, there probably wasn't 400 head AI'd across America.
Right. Exactly.
So, when we had great success, we were 75% plus on that first AI, and we were hooked at that point.
Nice.
So, being able to have, 3 rams, that were bred 400 ewes that 75% of them stick, and they all land within a 10-day window was kind of amazing for us.
Right.
Kind of game changer level.
Was there that many people within the industry knew about you doing this or no?
I would say there's probably limited 40, 50 people we talked about. So no one really took it as, hey, this is a great idea.
Right.
Other than the guys who were, sold us bucks that we could breed to. So, or lease bucks that day.
I just like the fact that whenever history is being made, 9 times out of 10 people don't know history's being made.
Yeah.
And that was kind of why I was asking what I was asking, because somebody setting in on 400 head of sheep, as you said, hadn't probably been done in the United States before.
So it was fun for us, in that regard.
Yeah.
And, I look at how efficient we were, and it probably took for those 100 head, where we didn't really know what we were doing.
Right.
Probably took 5 hours. I mean, where we
really
averaged about 20 an hour. So not a real smooth
Once again,
process.
this is AI.
This is AI,
yes.
Correct. Where now we may breed those same 100 head in right over 2 hours. So,
oh my!
It was a little bit more a process. We didn't have the right labor skill set. We had to kind of perfect things.
And just experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's do a little animal science here. The gestation of a sheep is
right at 145 days.
145 days, which is basically shy of 5 months.
Correct.
Yeah. So if I remember right, they're ruminant just like everything else, right? Okay. So
ruminant like cattle. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. 4 stomachs and.
Yep. The biggest difference on when we go to animal science on sheep versus cattle is the cervix. So where on calf, you have a large enough area you can stretch the cervix past that catheter directly through it to implant right at the into the uterine horn. In the sheep world, we cannot do that. So we can either take up a pipette to the tip of the cervix and splash it into it. It's called the kind of shot in the dark process. Not very successful. Other than it's done well in Australia where they have commercial rams and they can do natural heats. Once you have to synchronize your heats, the quality or conception rate and that process goes down considerably. So they're doing it 10,000 head. They're doing pulling out 200 ewes a day. Where the teaser rams mark them just on a natural heat. They go back in then later and do the splash in the dark technique. We do ours on synchronization with Cedars and PG600. In that regard, you have to do it.
Cedars basically like cattle cedars.
Same company makes them, just smaller size.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's something I don't guess for those of you out there. We've been talking about how amazing it is to do this, but we haven't really talked about what you do it or how you do it. You just talked about the what you call it, the splash in the dark or
shot in the dark
technique. But let's go into the actual process of artificial inseminating one.
So the first thing you start with is anesthesia. So we need to put them into a light sedative mode.
Yeah, here we go. You're saying what? Yeah, I know.
So completely different than the cattle world where you put them into
hogs.
Hogs. And so as they get their light sedative, then we go and we roll them into a cradle position. So in theory, onto their backs, laying flat. We prep them with shearing their lower abdomen, in theory, from their navel to their nipples. Clean that area up, bring them up to the technician, actually invert them at that point. So back feet up in the air, front feet down on the ground, in that cradle so they're restrained.
And Tyson was showing me around the facility out here, and the cradles look somewhat like a gurney, don't they?
Similar, very similar.
Not obviously as big, but and they we were talking about, they are custom made just for doing this, correct?
Correct.
It was really cool. I did take just a shot of video of the facility. It's kind of like a tub and back where they bring the groups in and then they push them up. He's got a remote controlled hydraulic chute that, what do you call it? Do you pin them or?
It's a grab and tilt. That's what we call it.
Like you would catch the neck on a cow or a calf, the whole side moves over and pins them against the other side.
Yep.
And then I'm guessing that allows you to go ahead and trank them or?
Yep. So in theory, we anesthetize them at that point. Wait for about 20 seconds until the anesthesia kind of works into the system. It tilts, then at that point the catch tilts to the side We release it. The ewe rolls off into a cradle, and then we start the prep work.
I haven't seen it. I've seen pictures of it. He showed me through the chute system here. It looks like it'd be really, really fun to watch.
It is.
I'm
fun
sure
to
it's a lot
watch.
of work. I'm sure it'd be more fun to watch than actually be the guy probably going through the whole process. But I guess it's just like a cattleman gets used to working cows. It's just part of it. I'm guessing probably not everybody has that nice a chute.
No, 99% of the places we go to, when they have a big pen, which there's a strong young boy that goes out and catches the
College,
sheep.
high school,
and,
football players. You bet.
Exactly. They run and catch the animals and bring them up and secure them at that point.
You bet. So if you are at Joe Average Sheep Breeder facility, the young man catches it.
Yep, it's an size.
And that's the size, and then just simply lift it up into this gurney, basically.
Yep, and we try to get the kids to roll them in. So in theory, they can just go from side. From
so does that
one
gurney
side.
go down too, or no?
No, the sheep are actually
raised.
It's this point where the sheep would, if they tilted to the side, they actually are right at that height.
Okay, so anyway, we get them in the gurney, and I think where I interrupted you at was you had shaved from the navel to the nipples, and let's pick up from there.
So at that point, then like we talked about, we raise their feet and legs, the cradle inverts. We make 2 small incisions about the size of a small child's pinky. So the first side on the left side, we use actually insert a laparoscope, which allows us to see into the abdomen of the female. We'll insert CO2 gas to kind of give us a working area, just like if you had a gallbladder taken out. And then on the right side, on the right incision, we actually take a pipette with a small 25 gauge needle on the tip of it and insert it. And it actually, at that point, we're visualizing the uterine horns themselves. And we take that needle and actually just puncture into the uterine horn and then insert semen directly in that direction. So
almost like a vaccination.
Almost exactly like similar to vaccinate. It's almost, I call it almost microscopic. So when you pull out, there's really no evidence that anything happened. Maybe just a small little blood spot. That would be. But so the neat part about it is by going directly into the uterine horn, we bypass the vagina, we bypass the cervix, we bypass all those fluids, all the contamination, and the semen is actually right there to wait to come, for the oocyte to drop or the egg to drop into the tip of the uterine horn where we already have the semen waiting for it.
All right, so remember how novice I am at this. While you're doing this, is in full blown heat or is out of heat? How many hours?
She should be getting right to the point where she's coming out of heat.
Okay.
So in full blown heat to coming out.
Okay.
So we're always trying to catch on the backside. So we've synchronized these. We started the synchronization process or coming into heat 48 hours ago.
So you're just going, like when we breed cows, one mounts the other and you know how hot she's standing.
Correct.
That doesn't happen in sheep?
We utilize it, but we don't go strictly off it.
So they will ride?
We use teasers. So Gomer bulls per se.
Yes.
So
one ewe won't ride another ewe?
They do.
They do.
But not as aggressive. We don't use it for strictly telling.
Right.
But what we'll do is we'll take a group of 100 ewes for the day. We might take 10 teaser rams out, have markers on them. So in theory, we know, hey, these ones came into strong heat first. AI them at the beginning of at the period. These 20 did not. They're going to get done towards the end of the day.
So it's not just a shotgun on 400 head. You actually try and categorize them according to the time they come in.
Correct. With still kind of using timing as kind of the basics of timing is, hey, the nice part is the semen. If it's fresh or frozen, makes a little bit of difference. If it's fresh, we have a bigger window that we can play with. If it's frozen,
if it's fresh, bigger window.
Yep.
Yeah.
On frozen, we say 8 hours kind of for conception, so we go a little bit further back towards true ovulation. With the fresh semen, we put it in early and let it sit there and wait for the egg to come down.
And then twins is normal.
Yep.
Twins is normal.
Yep.
Okay.
So triplets is kind of we always say if you have 175% should be a strong drop rate where every ewe is going to have 1.75 babies. So you're going to have more twins than singles, and then still throw some triplets in there to kind of boost your number at that point.
So we've been talking about AIing. How does embryo transplant in these deals? I mean, I'm guessing the handling process is similar.
Very, very similar. So the first thing that you do is you have to breed the ewe. So most 99% of them once again is done by a laparoscopic AI process. So and it's similar to cattle where there's 4 days of follicular stimulating hormones that are given to the female beforehand. We breed them, and then 6 days later we come to harvest the
6 days
embryos.
later.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And what is the normal? Is there any normal amount of embryos that's produced, or?
I tell people that if they can expect usually 8 transferable embryos out of a mature female. Ourselves, we probably play on the edge a little more. We like the yearlings to 2-year-olds. We always kind of figure if we can have 6 transferable embryos, it's a great program.
And do you ever freeze those?
We can. It's not probably done a whole lot in the sheep industry. Most of the time, everybody kind of works with fresh.
So you have to have your recips. Is that what you call them?
Recips. Yeah. So we have those programmed also for them to be in stage of day 6.
So the theory of it's not a lot different than cattle.
Exact same theory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Just don't freeze hardly any.
We don't. If guys, I guess if they're doing embryo transfer work in February, March, they're probably freezing embryos. Majority of us do it in August, September. So and a few of us do it in May. So
basically, I think what you said earlier. Let's talk. The only way I know to get a point across is talking cattle to you. We got a show heifer, and we're going to flush her, which has done some. Mm-hmm. Is that what you meant earlier when you were talking about your yearlings, or
correct?
Is that as young as you would go into one, or?
So usually right at 8 months is very young. 12 months is kind of, I guess, what I consider to be 12 to 14 months is kind of the tip of where we prefer to do it at. So if she was born in January, she was showed all year. The next May, we'd like to start flushing her. A lot of programs think that's kind of a little aggressive. You won't get as big of egg counts doing it that way. Right. Now on a large scale, if you look at the total numbers of it, always have the wild individuals.
Quality of embryos any different in a mature ewe versus a younger one, or no?
We don't see it. So you'll have once in a while you have some degenerates and so forth. Maybe a little bit more complications, I guess, or lower. Some embryos you just don't put in, but it's mainly just you're going to have a.
Do you grade them like cattle or no?
Correct. Yep.
You do. So there's 1s and 2s and.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, 1s and 2s are kind of horse ideal, and
so since we're on the embryo side or mentality here, you said you don't really freeze that many. Is there no, like, we sell a lot of embryos in cattle online or whatever? Is there none of that done in the sheep, or very little, or some, or
very little?
Right.
So, we'll have some confirmed bred recips that will, once in a while guys will sell in
confirmed bred recips. There you go, like same as a cattle.
Yeah, same as a cattle. But the ability to hey, we're going to buy embryos, and there's just still too many open windows, I guess, at this point. It's just not, like I said, 2009, we're 11, 12 years into doing this strategically in the United States versus, the cattle world that's been doing it since the 80s.
So one of the sponsors of the Genuine JBH is the Wilkerson Farms, and they specifically house recips, and they specifically put in embryos for people. Is there anybody in the sheep business doing that now, or?
Yeah, we do it a little bit.
You do?
On a small scale. There's a veterinarian service, reproductive specialty group out of Indiana that does it as a true business.
They don't offer the recips, do they, or do they?
They do now, yeah. Yep.
So
they actually raise some of them on site, some of them they buy, and it allows people to be able to bring in their donor, have them go through the entire process. They put the embryos in, they bring out the confirmed bred recips.
Let's talk about the sheep industry in America just a little bit. And by the way, I do have a few Australian followers.
Okay.
Yes, now I got 8 or 10 Snapchat followers, and they've been telling me they've been listening to the podcast. So shout out to all my Aussies over there. I'm just not that sharp on the sheep industry as a whole, say, versus the beef industry. Is there that many commercial ewe herds in America still to the day, or if so, is there more in certain locations, or?
It's a number that is not as big as it was 20 years ago.
Okay.
But there's still a large percentage for the recipient herd that we're trying to bring in. So I would say if there's 20,000 recip ewes being implanted a year in the United States, that's that would be a lot.
So like we have the national, or the Iowa Cattlemen's and the National Cattlemen's Associations. Is the sheep industry set up with associations like that?
It is. So like there's the American Sheep Industry, different associations across that are strictly for commercial producers. Or I would say they're for all producers, but mainly kind of controlled by the commercial industry. And then that's where like our recip ewes that we bring in are all from, I call them the Western Mountain ewes. They're white-faced ewes, big pelts, designed to be great mothers.
Right.
We bring them in towards.
By Western, you mean?
Ours are Western Colorado, but there's a lot that come out of Wyoming, Idaho.
Okay.
Everywhere. For us, we like those ewes because they're usually 4 or 5 years old. They've been through, their fourth lambing. Hopefully they're on their fourth lambing.
Right.
Maybe they're getting a little slower, so they can't quite, when a bear starts chasing them, they don't quite run quite as fast. Type of situation. But we put them into a dry lot environment or a pasture environment in northwest Iowa, and they can handle it just
right.
They
think they've died and gone to heaven. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like why was this feed bucket not out of the mountains the last 5 years?
Exactly. Well, me asking you that, obviously, I get guys saying, "Hey, who's got recips to put embryos in?" And I'm just thinking if you wanted to get real aggressive, like obviously you are in the sheep industry, I was just wondering how difficult it would be to come up with those recips, or because I'm guessing just like cattle recips, you don't want to you don't want a bad one.
We've had bad ones before, and we bought 100 head and had 30% conception rates on different groups, and we've had buy 200 head truckloads now, and we can stick right at 70% stick rates. So
right.
So we've learned that side, and we actually get them from a producer who was part of our packing plant. Whenever they run 10,000 ewes, and us buying 200 a year, it's not like that we're having to buy their problems.
That would be a definite advantage for you, because you would have a good idea where all the sheep herds are by owning a packing plant all those years. And so we've talked about you and your operation doing this, but you do custom work also here or everywhere?
Everywhere. We go on the road, and I think I look back in between shows, sales, and breedings. I think I was on the road 240 days last year, so up and down the road quite a bit. But with that, the difference on the sheep side is, for doing 5 head, 10 head, it's easy to move the sheep around. When you want to start doing 100 head flocks and so forth, it's easier to be on the road than it is trying to move the animal.
So do you have people bring? What's the most that people would bring into you here?
We have a couple customers that are close that bring 80 head to 100 head at a time. Once it gets over 100, it's kind of a catch-22 whether it's easier for me to go there or them to come here. If it's within an hour or two, we'll still have them come here, and just a lot of time depends on whether they have a crew put together. But it takes usually about 7 people to run the process smoothly, where we can do about 45 an hour. Sometimes they don't have the facilities, so they prefer to it's easier for them to load the trailer up, come on over, have our crew run them through the system.
Let's talk pricing on. I'm going to set in, and I'm at one of those Kennedy Venture sales. I'm going to buy the best ewe I can get, and then I'm going to have you flush her, and then I might even buy some recips. Can we talk about cost theoretically here?
Get some ballpark numbers. So let's say you're just going to AI the ewe. It's somewhere between $30 to $50 based on the practitioner who's going to perform the procedure and location, travel costs, etc. So I always tell everybody $30 to $50 is kind of your window.
Okay, and that's per ewe.
Per ewe.
Yes.
Then semen cost is anywhere from $10 a straw for something that's not very valuable to $400 a straw. I would say on average our semen probably runs right at $250 to $350.
Right.
So
that's on your bucks.
And that's on our bucks. Mm-hmm. We consider our bucks to be more the higher end. We don't have a lot of rams that we want to sell semen for under $100, and if that's the only value of the ram, he's not good enough for us to want to use.
Sure.
So in theory, you're going to have somewhere right around $300 for semen on average. $30 to $40 per ewe to breeder. So you're right at $340 to produce to produce a pregnant.
So let me ask you about that semen though. Can I bring my own semen?
Yep, you can. We'll have a lot of times we'll collect the rams on site.
There we go.
So we collect them, we process it, kind of we start using it right away. We chill some of the other for later in the afternoon.
So if I have invested in a ram and I want 30 of these bred to him, I bring him right along.
Yep.
And you collect?
Yep, we collect and process the use and roll right through it. And we'll have probably a third of our people bring their own, use their own rams, and probably 2/3 of the people that we do work for, use our rams. So it's a mixture of both.
The scheduling, I guess, when Drake buys boar semen from Wintex, basically you got to know at least 8 days out. Is that similar to what you're doing? I mean, do I need, if we're set up to put in to AI 30 head, you got to know so far in advance on?
Yeah, we start scheduling for July and August. We start that schedule in March.
Okay.
So as far as, the first thing you have to do is you have to, kind of claim your day for the technician to be able to, artificially inseminate them.
Right.
So whether that's me or someone else, if you're in Indiana, it's, it will be somebody else than if you're in Hayward, Iowa.
Sure.
So that's the first thing we always, structure up is the scheduling. At that point, if you're on site, it's not quite as important to know exactly which, how many head to what ram.
Right.
But if we're shipping semen out, usually we've done booking semen by, I'd say July 15th, we're filled up for the year. We collect
kind of like boars.
Very similar to boars. We collect, we try to collect 4 days a week. So, if someone's already, bought the jumps for, that week, then that's the day of your technician, and we have to move around.
Yeah, we're going to get into this semen side pretty intense here. And that was one thing as I toured the studs back here. I guess, are they called studs? And they're not really.
In the sheep world, they're mainly, sheep businesses or, flocks. And then, there's very few people that all they do in the sheep world. I don't know if there's one that in the sheep world. It's
just a stud.
Just a stud where they buy, there was one, it didn't last. And, after the first year, they kind of close it down. And it's easier for in the sheep industry to, have you buy a ram and hey, they use this ram myself and I'm going to sell semen to help offset costs. That's what I would say 95% of people people do.
Kind of bouncing around just a little bit here and the way my brain works. But when I was talking to Will Winter, he said he never buys a boar prospect just to sell semen and make money off of. He buys it because it's a piece for their herd. Is that kind of similar to your mentality?
That's my mentality. I don't know if that's the entire industry's mentality for the sheep world, but that's my mentality.
Right.
And that's why we sell a lot more. I think we sell more semen than anybody else because, we're trying to raise national champion caliber or $50,000 plus rams. Well, for me, there's no reason to buy one that's not, good enough to do that. So it's hard also for me to want to promote someone to buy semen out of something that's not at that caliber that I don't want to use myself.
Exactly. And that's, and it's like I've talked in a couple of these podcasts. It's okay to just want good quality, good quality, but it's also okay to frickin' swing for the fence every time, and nobody needs to condemn anybody. And obviously the prices are different. Mm-hmm. I'm more of your mentality. If they're not, and my son is definitely of your mentality. If they're not really, really good, he don't want nothing to do with them. Man, oh man, I was impressed walking back through these, do you call them bucks or rams or what do you call them?
Both? Call them both, yep.
Either. Just their build and their look. And as Will talked about, they have different bloodlines that do different things. Is that similar to yours or?
We'll try to run usually 2 genetic lines. So, Drop the Mic is kind of the line that we're, I guess, have hung our hat on or ran from this point. So if you go back into the ram barn, every single ram goes back to Drop the Mic at some point. That ram was kind of unique where he could be both the female producer and the male producer. So with that point, we, go back in and we've tried to run lines. We had a line that we also ran on our Beast Mode line, which produced, very high quality males. Maybe, we weren't real sure how good the females were going to be long term. There's some forks in the tree, but for the most part, we try to look for the best phenotype, best genotype, and, roll with the ram that gives us the best results from that. A little different than the pig world where, hey, we're going to try to, keep Yorkshires and the females and so
these are all crossbred sheep, correct?
They are. Everybody's sheep are crossbreds at this point. Right. They have a lot of it, like ours would all be very Hampshire based influence. So that would be, I'd say, they'd be 85% in that regard.
So are there still herds of Cordales and Suffolks and whatever?
They're just not in our, we consider it outside our industry.
So they're not really show sheep anymore.
They're frame sheep is what we call them.
Frame sheep. What's that mean?
It means that they're big, tall, and longer, and they make their breeding decisions more on size and scale, where we make ours more on a clubby appearance.
On build.
Yep, on build. On the production world, they might have more production value because of, growth curve. Ours may have more commercial value based on just muscling and, terminal shape.
So I get this question all the time, or used to, the old timer. I'll call them the old timers, which I'm an old timer now, but, they would see Drake showing a pig. Go, is that one? What is that one? Is that a Hamp York or what all's that one got in it? How many crosses or how many different breeds?
Mainly 2 breeds across them, Hampshire and Suffolk. Those are the main 2 breeds that came through to make our current seed stock.
And are those both black-faced?
Correct. Yeah. One has a white cap on the head and white fuzzy legs. The other one has a black head with black legs. I would say 90% of the flocks in the United States are 10% Suffolk, 90% Hampshire.
Really? Now, what does Hampshire do? What breed are they in cattle?
I'm trying to think of which. I'm not exactly sure how they would relate on cattle side. I'd say on the pig side, we're more terminal shape. They're the terminal side of where
Hampshire are more the muscle part of it, and
so I'd say the best way to describe it is we brought the Hampshires in for the base width, the bone, the stoutness, the ruggedness across the board. We brought the Suffolk into them to make them harder handling, more expressive, kind of freakier hided. In our today's show world, we don't need a whole lot of touch and tone and freaky hides and exotic look. We need more of a smooth, well-built, well-designed, good structured animal, which is the Hampshire with, plenty of structure underneath the feet and legs.
Since we're there, let's talk about that a little bit, because I was quizzing you when we was up at your house there at the show barn, and I'm sure it's just like steers have been. I'm just not smart enough to talk about it or experienced enough in the industry. At one time, they wanted them freaky, long, tall, long neck.
Blue and hard, and that was the late 90s.
Okay.
Early thousands, we started making them stouter, more correct, more well balanced. The last 10 years, we've worried more about build design, muscle shape, feet and legs. I think feet and legs we've discussed have always been important. The amount of bone and fuzz that goes along with it. We look back at pictures and we thought back in the the late 90s, early thousands, we had sheep that were huge bone in comparison to competitors.
Right.
Now we look 3 years ago, and those sheep that we thought were still huge bone don't have nearly as much, I guess, foot
frail.
size. It looked frail. Probably similar to the pig world, where
Sure.
we never really thought it was a big issue, but when you actually really strategically start looking at it, I mean, you can make it a lot bigger and stouter in a hurry.
Muscle that's pretty heavy criteria right now, correct?
And for us, it's extremely important because it's hard to win shows with light muscled animals.
Right.
So I mean, you can kind of hit, you can get by with, having a little bit of muscle, maybe not quite as good a design, or maybe a little sloppier in their appearance. But the light muscle.
You can say that again. You can get by with more muscle and not quite as cool a phenotype.
Correct. My thought process versus having a great design and look, but not having enough, not being light on muscle is kind of a good way to be sixth in class.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me stop right here. When this guy tells you, in his opinion, you probably ought to listen, because the amount of major winners he's had in the past decade probably is, I'm assuming there would be somebody close, but you're right there knocking at the...
Yeah, I'd say that we may not be the biggest, the most successful program, but we'd have to be in the conversation for the top three.
We're talking cutting edge here. We're talking current day. We're talking major winners. Hopefully we have majors to show at here in the next few months. Man, this coronavirus has been really messing with everything. But back in the good old days, whenever we had shows, he was winning them. I asked you about did we go chubby and clubby a little bit more? And I'm just looking at social media. I'm looking at what I don't, like I said, I don't claim to know anything about it. You said that's a little bit going out now?
I'd say that was 5 years ago.
Okay.
So, our lead buck that we've kind of built our program around, Drop the Mic, he came in 2015. And about his success came in, 2017, 18, 19, whereas, he was three-year back-to-back,
Tell people some of that success he had. I mean, you don't have to go through all of them, but...
I think we figured out there was 20 state fair champion reserves in 18, kind of same with 19. The neat thing about that ram is whoever used them had success.
Right.
So it wasn't like, hey, you didn't work at this place or on this lines. He just worked across the board. And he was a buck that was, probably, he was 85% for muscle, but 99% for design and build. So, I mean, he was the correct one that, kind of moved us from being chubbier and cuter, chubbier, clubbier,
right,
to having more extension design again and, actual show ring look. And
so I give you a pencil and paper to draw the perfect sheep right now. That is what, as far as design?
I'd say he, tall fronted, big, tall shouldered, crazy in the rib shape as far as, being shallower at their, rib than they are at their flank, progressively deeper from the side.
Shallower at their rib than their flank.
Correct.
Okay.
So, different in the cattle world where we want to be deep sided. We want their chest floor to be tucked up in them, rounder, kind of, I tell everybody kind of like a round oval. So in theory, the crazy build ones are wider rib than they are deep.
Really?
So it's kind of
they're wider east to west than they are north to south.
And it's not very easy to make them that way.
No.
So, I mean, that's, and probably not, I don't know if it's the best idea production wise either, but those are the ones that, we look for on the show ring. And maybe you raise one or two like that, every two or 3 years, but those are the ones that, end up being industry changers for us too.
You think about that just a little bit. That's dang near impossible to do.
It's not very easy. So,
because if you get more volume, obviously it's going to drop.
Yep.
And you do not want slop down low, right?
Not in their chest floor,
Or in their belly, do you?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah, we want them to have a good slope to their rear flank.
You do?
Yep. So, in theory, we want their chest floor to be shoved up in them. We want them to progressively get, deeper and wider as they go back to their rear flank.
Well, earlier, as I said, this is season 1, and the theme of it is the semen industry. So let's dive into that. My old friend Steve, Novel Design, she has a contest up there that's pretty popular with sheep producers or with the whole club lamb industry.
Yeah, actually, I have a Man of the Year, Donor of the Year, Show Lamb of the Year contest for, I guess, those are the three. I guess a new.
And they're voted on by.
Now it's actually the breeders get a vote, and then they also have everyone votes. So per se crowd favorite for individuals in the industry.
And Drop the Mic was like
he was a 3-year back to back
nice
champion. So 2017, 2018, and 2019 he was the it was, as far as the industry voted on him being the lead sire, the most influential sire for our industry. So pretty wild. We lost him in 2019.
Oh,
so
you did.
He won't be able to carry on that tradition. He's got a couple sons that are probably going to be, I would say, would be the forerunner favorites for that, for that award.
Just let me remind you listeners out there how hard I'm busting my ass for you. I have had the 3-time bucking bull world champion on a podcast. Now I've got Drop the Mic in the sheep world. What more can I do, Tyson? I mean, really, what? Talking about Gerald Buck's bruiser, of course, and now we're talking about Drop the Mic in the sheep industry. And let's go ahead and talk about, let's just go through the whole semen collection process. Let's talk about how sheep versus boar versus bull semen is different. Let's just go through that whole process, if you would just kind of touch on that for me.
There's 2 ways to collect it. An AV, which is an artificial vagina.
Sure.
Using a dummy ewe or a dummy animal to have the ram jump. That's I'd say our preferred methodology.
Basically the same as bulls.
Yep, same as bulls. Yep. Then there's also electroejaculate, where in theory, same as bulls.
Yeah.
We try to use the artificial. The AV as much as possible.
Yeah.
More natural, and it gets a little bit higher quality semen.
Yep.
But there's some individuals, like Drop the Mic was one, that would never use an AV, and so he got to the point where he saw us coming and kind of turned his nose up and kind of got excited about it. So
oh my,
those are the 2 processes for collecting. The big difference I'd say between the pig and the cattle world is we may get a 0.5 mil to a 2 mil collection is kind of this size, but the concentration level is extremely different. So
it's through the roof on sheep.
It's anywhere from 4 to it can be anywhere from 4 to 5 billion live sperm
with
cells.
A B?
A B, yes.
Holy buckets.
Per mil. So we try to make sure we have at least 35 million live sperm cells per breeding to each female. So if you get a 2 mil collection at 4 billion, that's 8 billion live sperm cells. So we can breed 100 plus ewes to that collection very, very easily.
You told me that out back, and my jaw hit the ground. That's unreal. I really didn't know that about sheep. I guess that they were that much more
concentrated would be the word.
Concentrated would be the exact term to use there. Once again, he said one collection off of a buck can breed 100 plus ewes. So it's priced by the dose unit. What do you call it?
We call it straw unit.
Straw?
I mean, so it's fresh. We call it a unit, or if it's frozen, we consider a straw. In those straws, we're trying to make them 200 million concentration. Where in theory you're gonna breed 100 million to a ewe. If it's 50%, we have 50 million live sperm cells.
Sure.
So it takes 35 to breed the ewe. So we're always hedging on the upper side of that semen quality.
We talk about how concentrated it is. I'm assuming you still have to scope it for.
Yep, exactly.
Morphology.
So you do all the things on the front side. Where before you'd freeze it or before you didn't put it in. We make sure we do counts. We do quality evaluations.
Yeah.
As they're chilling it down, we also do the same processes, and after we thaw it out, we do the same processes. Sure. That's what's probably has changed the most in the last, I'd say, 3-4 years, is that our quality of frozen semen is strategically better now than it was pre-2010.
Let's go back and just, I was trying to visualize in my mind. Whenever you're collecting it, you're using it out here, not frozen. Are you packaging it in a straw, or how? What do you?
No, we keep it in like a 50 mil conical tube, 15 or 50 mil based on the size of the ejaculate. We'll extend it out at that point. Then going off of 150 million per mil, 200 million per mil, 100 million per mil. Extend it out, and then at that point we leave it in that conical tube and we draw out of that.
You just draw out of like a vaccine bottle.
Yep.
Basically.
It'd be kind of, I'd say, it's more of a single dose at a time. We draw that, clean off our pipette, draw out of it, go back.
Oh, you draw it in the pipette.
Correct.
I see what you do. Yeah.
Yep.
But then the pipette has the needle on the end of it, or?
Correct. So we actually draw up through the needle into the clear pipette, wipe it off.
With a syringe on top of the pipette, I assume?
Correct, yeah.
I see.
A 1 mil syringe. So we put and normally we would put a 0.5 mil of fresh semen into a use. So there's, 2 small quarter mil doses in that pipette, one for each uterine horn.
And then if you should freeze it, it goes into straws?
Correct. Yep. Either 0.5 mil, quarter mil straws based on what the semen company wants to freeze it as.
What is bull semen? Are those half?
Usually 0.5 mils.
That's what I was thinking.
Usually sex semen's quarters.
Yes, that's right.
So the sheep deal is very similar in that regard. So a lot of the exact same equipment that you'd use for bulls, you'd use for sheep.
Sure. Well, Tyson, I had most people don't know this yet because it won't be aired just for a little bit, but I had Jay Steenhook of Nichols Cryogenetics in, and we talked about the whole process there of his bull stud that he owns. And let's dive back into the bucks. And I mentioned this to Will Winter, and the obvious question. I mean, it's an obvious question, but there are some fertility issues, obviously, in sheep as well as there is in cattle and hogs and humans or whatever.
There is, and some of it's maturity issues, and some of it's just genetic issues. So,
Sure.
We used to struggle quite a bit whenever we were just selling rams to producers. So that was always a struggle for us. Is, you might
just herd bulls, basically.
In theory, herd bucks.
Yes.
So hey, they want to breed them to 50 ewes. They want to buy them for $5,000. And all of a sudden they'd want to have that December born be able to breed for July and August. Well,
Sure.
It's a buck lamb. So it's immaturity issues. It was 90% of it, and sometimes nutrition was an issue. And
right.
that's kind of how when we were doing one of our AIs out in California, I was sitting there complaining about the fact that had a customer that called and he said it was July 15th, his 7-month-old, 6-month-old buck lamb wasn't fertile yet, and he was grumpy about it. Or his buck that was fertile last year as a buck lamb at the end of the season isn't fertile yet. In July, and everybody always wants to push the buck on. Hey, it's the breeder.
The breeder. Yeah.
So I was complaining. I was just wish I had a solution where I can make sure, hey, if you're feeding X, your buck's not fertile, then we'll work with you. But if you're not taking care of them, I mean that was our answer, because a lot of times we sit and we baby our bucks. I mean for us our business is making sure these things are fertile, so that's we spare no expense in that regard. Right. But you go to a lot of these producers that back 5 years ago they'd be running out in a pasture with 10 ewes and maybe have a lick tub, maybe get some corn thrown at them, and that was their nutrition program.
Yeah.
So actually it's kind of unique. I had a gentleman sitting in the background while I was doing my rant about nutrition and in the sheep industry how it wasn't very consistent for a guy like myself who was selling bucks out to other individuals.
Basically, what you're saying here is you were tired of doing everything right, sending the product to the breeder in perfect shape, and then as happens in the bull deal a lot, they just get kicked out into whatever lot, and nutrition slips that they're used to being on awesome nutrition. It gets slipped down into a lesser
nutritional plane.
Yeah, nutritional plane, and then herein lies the issues.
Yeah, but it was kind of unique. I mean, I was sitting there, having that rant, and then after the AI, Andrew Beam, who helps run those for me out in California, said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to this guy that we're breeding his ewes. He's actually a dairy nutritionist, and we sat down. He's like, hey, he said, I understand your problems. I think I got a solution for you. And together we came up with a product that they had used in the dairy industry and some of those other specialties that made our bucks more fertile themselves. So for us trying to collect rams, more concentration, higher volumes, higher quality sperm. Now we actually had that product for ourselves, which is called Macho Man, and it allowed me to, whenever someone would buy a buck, we'd offer them a bucket of Macho Man, or we'd sell a bucket of Macho Man, and it took care of.
Is it picked up by a feed company, or is it just private label? Or
we just sell it online at our Rural Supplements website, and it's great. We've actually had a lot of success for guys that had tried it in the boar side and all the bull side.
Really?
Some of those bulls that are, I guess, problematic. A couple of those down in Texas where it's really hot. We've had great success on converting semen over and getting them fertile earlier and keeping them fertile longer.
So this is just for the male side.
Just for the male side, correct?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's why this podcast exists, because real life situations are where most problems get solved.
Get solved. Yeah.
It's after they get solved, and then you get all the marketing hype from that you never know exactly. You don't ever get the full story, but
no, and that's that's a lot of how our business works. I mean, we try to find something that works for us, and that makes our life easier. And then why wouldn't we want to share it to our customers?
Exactly. It's common sense. And once again, that's the thing that I don't know before I sat down and done these podcasts, because I when I bought a bull, I bought it to make money on semen.
Yep.
That was my only train of thought. I had some recip cows that I put embryos in, but I wanted that bull to make money on semen alone. And talking to Will Winter, I think it's very unique that you're buying the buck, you're buying the boar for your program, for things for your program, but you're also sharing it with your customers, and you're creating better sheep for one thing, and you're creating an awesome clientele.
Well, it makes happier customers when when they see that hey, this is the buck that Tyson's using, he's having success with, and now we have the option to use that ram also. Yes. It just gives everybody a higher sense of confidence that hey, this thing is going to work for us.
Right. Do you have a catalog with all your bucks in it, or how
websites? So
just basically online
on the website. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a catalog. It's produced by RSG that has some of our rams that are available for semen frozen frozen semen purchased through them.
Okay.
And we have our website, which we sell live fresh and frozen semen on both.
Now, I mean, see, that makes a lot of sense to me. I just think the bull deal, there should be a spot in that industry for that.
It's similar where in 10 years, we're going to look very similar to the way the cattle market is, where I think at this point now, 75% of the, I'd say 90% of the large sheep, progressive breeders are all using artificial insemination, maybe 95.
Right.
Where I could talk about 2009, there was us.
Yeah.
Was using it as a true, reproductive, process.
And that's a decade.
Yeah. It's not,
it's not that long a period of time. So
in 10 years, I'm expecting, that we will probably have ram studs at that point out there, or at least have breeders who, like myself, will, have 10, 15 rams available for different purposes,
right.
For when they're trying to do different things. And
in past podcasts with Dean Keppert, we talked about the cloning. Is that in the sheep or not in the sheep? Or
it's lightly in the sheep. So we're getting some success out of it. I mean, I think Fictitious was the first clone that was successful.
Fictitious, that's a good name.
Yeah. So we had Fictitious 2.0. There's Bullseye and there's Bullseye Clone. Those are the two, I think, mature rams that I know of that, one has good frozen semen, good fresh semen that has now passed.
Right.
But it's, the other one I think is working to, has fresh semen, but that has not been freezable yet. It's working that direction. Hardest thing is just, the generation interval. I mean, where, hey, I found this clone works. Now I got to wait, even though our gestation's only 5 months, it's still got to be another 7 months still when they're, when they're fertile.
Cost.
If they're fertile, cost. But to be honest, I mean, if you can make another, drop the mic or another, to be honest, I think it makes more sense on the female side for us. If I can make another 20 peaches and it cost me 10,000 a piece, I'd be more than happy to write the check.
I'd be curious, and I don't want to step on any toes just running my mouth, but whenever I had friends that done a lot of cloning in cattle, and it seemed like the reproductive value was hit and miss on some of them. It seemed like the whole stage of life was hit and miss on some of them. I'm not talking out of school. I'm talking what was told to me directly by the breeders, and I don't mean any ill will towards any cloning facilities, but does that scare you at all, or do you know have you experienced anything like that? Or
we don't have enough of them yet to really have a true idea of exactly what we will get or won't get. I just think from talking to the other industries, which we look, that's one of the ways that we try to make our decisions is, well, what's working in the other industries, because the sheep world is
dairy. It worked probably as good as anything. I think probably.
I think so. That's where they've had as much success on those bulls as anything.
Well, Tyson, obviously, once again, I'm here with Tyson Rule, and man, I have learned a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. And I never come into this deal claiming that I knew much about the sheep industry, but I love to learn new things. And we've been currently talking about the bucks and the whole collection process and everything. And you know what? Here's what it boils down to. Can you make money? I mean, obviously, $400 does not seem outrageous to me. I got lucky and I had Heat Seeker, and he made dang good money. Is there heat seekers out there in the sheep world? There,
very easily so. And I think there's probably been two big bucks that in the last 3-4 years had more than a 1 year run. So one of them was a buck called Bullseye that Brad Amthauer raised out of Eastern Iowa.
Yeah, Bradwell.
Yep. The other one would be Drop the Mic. Drop the Mic. He had a 3-year run, and I think we figured out that before we lost him, we broke $1 million.
No kidding.
And we believe that he'd be
that's $1 million in sales.
$1 million in actually just semen sales.
In semen sales. Yes,
correct.
Yes.
Yep. Not to count all the extra live value we got on them on the live lamb side, but and I think there'll be more rams though. I think it's pretty consistent to break $100,000 on semen sales with some of the top rams, and I think there'll be more that hit that 500 to 750 to million. We have a couple rams that have already hit over 500,000 that are Drop the Mic sons, and expect it to go on. I remember we were sitting at a show circuit, I guess our annual meeting that was in Denver. We had a lot of discussion with Geyer and Clint Petzel, some of those guys, and about whether there was money in the bull market versus the sheep market and so forth. And that's where we kind of tried to explain to them. They started kind of complaining about all the extra advertising costs, if they aren't good, and how long it's going to take to freeze semen. And I told them, I said, well, we're not going to do it if there's not money. Why would we want to do it if there's not money in it?
That's a very valid point. I mean, there's people that promote bulls just so they can go to Denver and
enjoy it
and do that,
time,
and to state the obvious, with those kind of figures being generated, do you get investors wanting to come in on bucks or?
Oh, all the time. Or we'll get people that buy rams that, hey, you sell a lot of semen, so we want to buy half inch of the ram and have you sell semen.
Sure.
And it's hard because, not every ram does that.
Right.
And usually it's not the ram that, is, 35,000, 20 to 30,000 aren't usually those rams that have the big dollar amounts. It's the ones that you don't want to sell for 100,
right,
or it's the ones you sell half of for 50 plus, and
yeah, there's always a fine line there. Can a hot ram ever fall clear out of bed in a blink of an eye, or is that?
We haven't, the only time we've had that is if, maybe a buck was promoted up hard, it looked great as a baby, and then maybe, offspring didn't produce.
Right.
So it can be a 1 year hit. And, a lot of people have different philosophies on that. So a lot of guys, they want to buy one and pay for it the first year. If we're going to raise one, I actually prefer to use that buck lamb myself the first year.
Sure.
Make sure, hey, he's going to do what I think he's going to do. And then, allow customers to come in and buy semen, which, we'll do some buck lamb sales, but it's also when we talk about fertility. You're trying to make a decision in March and April and May what you're going to breed to in July and August. Mm-hmm. Those buck lambs are still young and that semen's still immature. So it's not always, as easy to, collect those rams and depend on those ram lambs. And
right.
It's kind of like having, the high school kid that you're going to put out in the football team,
Yep, exactly right.
He might be able to throw a touchdown pass, or he might fold under pressure in a hurry and
that's exactly
go
right.
running for the sidelines. And
you bet. I don't want to say that specific species minded people judge. They do though, mm-hmm. And I think what you just stated will blow some people's minds. And it's lessened greatly in the last decade. The kids in the cattle barn never used to think about the kids in the pig barn, or the kids in the sheep barn never thought about, or whatever. I see so many kids showing so many different species now that's not really a thing anymore. But for us, for the old timers out there to think that there's an old buck sheep out there that just sold over $1 million of semen, to him, that's still an old buck sheep standing in an orchard under a tree, and that's the beauty of 2020.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing we have just in the sheep industry in general. There's a lot of revenue that runs through it, and whether it's we struggle with that in the feed companies, the feed companies still think of us, maybe it's not the executives or the sales reps, but the guy at the mill that wants to go home on a Friday afternoon, right. He doesn't, sometimes heck, it's just a couple of sheep that are going through, so let's just mix the feed, roll with it and go. Or same situation with on the veterinarian side,
right.
Hey, we need you to come out in the middle of the night and do the cesarean. A lot of those veterinarians like, heck, it's just a sheep.
It's respect.
Yep.
It's basically a respect issue, and until you get to be me and you get to walk into these elite establishments, boy, I tell you what, I just enjoy people just out there trying to take things to the next level. It don't matter what level they're at. It don't matter whether they're Fred's trying to get to Winter County Fair, or it don't matter whether they're at the top of the industry trying to go ahead and find that next buck, bull, or boar to change the industry. It's just fun if you're in the right state of mind to go in and just analyze and try and educate yourself and just have fun doing it. And man, I have done that today. I know I got to go take some pictures about 2 hours away from here, and I'm sure you got much better things to do than talk to me, Tyson Rule. But man, have I had fun, and man, have you been extremely educational. I hope my listeners appreciate everything that is going to be covered in here, because I'm 55 years old and I just went through a grad course, I feel like. So,
and there's a lot of us. I think on the top of our species, we're looking for new things to do.
Sure.
When you're the top guy in the pig world, or you're the top guy in the cattle world or the sheep world, at some point you've kind of exhausted your options for inside your industry. And a lot of guys, it's fun for a lot of the judging teams to come here because our lammy barn looks like a pig nursery.
Sure.
Our hoop barns look like the cattle barns.
Yep, I agree with that.
We've tried to steal a lot of things from each industry to incorporate back into ours that make us more efficient, more productive.
I just think that's what I'm looking for out there. That's and that's kind of what coaches look for in athletes. They look for, who would have thought that a kid could have run down field, jumped backwards, and caught a football in one hand 10 years ago. and until somebody reaches out there and does it, now how many can do it? And it's the same thing in the livestock world. And here's one other point I want to get across to all the listeners and to you, Tyson. This whole world is not getting any easier. And as a livestock industry, I don't care what goats, sheep, hogs, cows, I don't care what it is. As a like-minded group of people, we have got to form together. We've got to get together and we've got to have each other's back, because I don't know what the future holds, but man, it's got to get better or it's going to get a lot worse. You know what I mean?
It's we've discussed that on, even the shows. I mean, as far as, hey, maybe we don't want to just leave our industry to choice of, hey, these, government extension programs are going to be the ones that tell us whether we can have a show or not. So
exactly.
We've discussed, I think, the privatization of these shows in the next 10 years is going to become more and more and more relevant.
Well, and it's not a lot different than college athletes getting paid. They're generating money. People, especially in the show industry, like I say, I don't care what species we're talking about. We invest a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And now nobody's holding a gun to our head telling us to do it. It's our recreation, it's our boat, it's our whatever. But still, we actually bring value to a show. And I think you're right. I think there's a dance that's going to take place here where we're going to have to figure out who's leading and who's not. And that's just things to think about. And man, I appreciate your time today and your expertise and just getting to go through your facility here. And like I say, Tyson, you got 3 kids. Just remember, take time to enjoy them, because, man, they're going to be grown, married, and gone before you know what hits you.
First one's already getting ready to go out to college after this next,
How's that make you feel?
Old. I guess that's the easy answer, I remember, kind of like you discussed, I still think of myself as the new guy in the industry.
Yeah.
The young kid coming up, and all of a sudden now I'm going to have a
college kid,
mm-hmm. and two more just starting to hit the show ring now. Yeah. So
how many of you kids are there in your family?
Me and my sister. So just my sister she was 2 years older than me.
And your dad was in and out of here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's how old?
68. 67, 68.
Yeah.
He'll be, I can't remember if he's turned 68 or I think he's going to turn 68 in October.
And I always try and talk about, I always have my mom and dad at the beginning of these podcasts, and boy, it's just so nice to be able to work with family. And I just like I told Will, I said, you may argue, you may fight, and you may fuss, but at the end of the day, it's still a privilege to have them around and just be able to work in a family operation like you're doing, right?
And that's, fun. Like, we're going to pull some cedars and give some shots for some synchronizations this afternoon. And
sure.
I'll have all 3 of my kids, my wife, my dad, and I'll knock it all out. In about 30 minutes, we'll be finished with the 100 U's and roll back in. But, it's fun to get to, have those experiences and those processes with everybody. And
those kids are going to remember that. They're going to remember it the rest of their life too. And regardless of whether they go on to be doctors or lawyers or sheep producers, it's just, and just like Gerald Buck said, when Bailey was in med school, they just look for kids like yours and like mine and all the livestock kids out there, I shouldn't call them kids, young people out there, because they've had to go through life experiences already. Invaluable,
It's whether, Madison's had to pull a baby lamb whenever I'm gone, or whether, she's had a sick lamb that she had to doctor and take care of. Those are life experiences that, she doesn't realize are happening when they're happening. No, she doesn't. But she will someday. Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave you alone. You're going to State Fair, I assume, with some. And yep. We have our State Fair now as they moved forward a week. So we're, this will be Madison's last, she tells me it'll be her last State Fair year. So, she wants to, finish off on this note, and we got a good run. So, we're excited about the set we have on feed for both that and Exarban and the fall show. So as we're winding down, and then we're getting ready to start back up on our next child, Mackenzie. So, all right, Tyson, thanks a bunch, buddy. Hey, thanks, Brad. You bet. Well, all right, there you go. I hope you had as much fun listening to that as I did making it. And I'm not joking one bit. I was a bit intimidated going into it because, like I said, it'd been 45 years since I'd even been near sheep. Well, I tried to represent you in the sheep industry to the best of my ability. When you got a Tyson Rule sitting in front of you, it's just not very hard. You just sit back and listen and learn. Boy, what fun that was. And once again, big thanks to Tyson Rule and the Rule Sheep Company there at Hawarden, Iowa. Big thank you to the sponsors out there for me. If you're interested in sponsoring here, just be sure and give me an email or a snap, and I'll certainly go over it with you. Genuine JBH Podcast obviously is in its infancy stage, and I rely a lot on what I hear back from you guys via snap, or you can drop us an email if you don't snap, or leave a message on Facebook. Well, once again, I greatly appreciate our sponsors, and if you're a cattle enthusiast, please
check out the Facebook pages of Voss Angus, Werning Cattle Company, SteerBidder.com, where you'll find the new catalog livestock listing service. And if you happen to have invested in some cattle embryos that need the utmost of care, check out Wilkerson Farms Facebook page. Boy, that facility is remarkable. If you're looking to remodel your working facility, an old barn or a new barn, or maybe even putting some pins in a trailer, give Amos Welding a call, check their Facebook page out. And then please don't forget our online apparel store managed by Custom Tees of Mid-Georgia. Todd down there is one great guy. If you have any questions while ordering online, his number is right at the bottom left of that page. Well, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Genuine JBH podcast. It helps us out in the iTunes ratings. And like our Facebook page at Genuine JBH Podcast.